Hey everybody, CJ here. Welcome back to the channel. About a month ago, I purchased a Quickshifter for my 2022 CBR1000RR. I got it installed and recorded it all, and I'm finally getting around to editing that footage down and making a little video for you all. In this video, I will go through the Quickshifter install, and hopefully you'll find this useful if you're thinking about installing one on your bike. I've also put quite a few miles on the bike since then, so after we go through the install, I'll spend a little bit of time talking about what it's like to ride with the Quickshifter and give you my thoughts and impressions. If you have a 2017 to 2022 CBR1000RR and you're thinking about installing a Quickshifter on your bike, I'll try to make this video pretty informative for you. For those of you who don't fall into that category, hopefully you still find this video interesting. So what is a Quickshifter? There are a ton of great videos out there that go into a lot of detail and dive into the nitty-gritties of motorcycle transmissions and Quickshifters. I won't bore you with the overly technical stuff here, but if you are interested in diving a little deeper into the mechanics of it all, I highly recommend searching around and learning more. But I'll take a moment to go over it at a high level here. Without a Quickshifter, when you want to shift into the next gear, you need to close your throttle and pull your clutch lever in before you shift. What this does is take the load off of the input shaft of your transmission. When you're riding along and your clutch lever is all the way out, meaning your clutch is fully engaged, there's a direct connection between your engine's crankshaft and the input shaft in your transmission. What this means is when your throttle is open and you're cruising along or accelerating, or your throttle is closed and you're engine braking, there's a force being applied to the input shaft of your transmission, and this means your transmission is under load. If you were to try to shift gears with your transmission under load, instead of the gears interlocking gracefully, you'll likely end up just grinding them together instead. When you pull your clutch lever in, which disengages the clutch, you're actually breaking the connection between your crankshaft and the transmission, which basically allows the input shaft in your transmission to spin freely with no force being applied to it. With no force being applied to it, even though the teeth of the two gears you're interlocking may be moving at different speeds, they'll be able to interlock nicely without making a horrendous grinding or clunking sound. Then you'll re-engage the clutch and open the throttle again and move on with your ride. What a Quickshifter does is replace the function of you using the clutch to take the load off of your transmission. The Quickshifter has a shift sensor, which senses when you move the shift lever up or down. There's a cable that connects the shift sensor to your motorcycle, and it sends a signal to your ECU to temporarily cut the ignition just long enough for you to change gears. So ultimately, the Quickshifter lets you change gears without having to pull in your clutch or close your throttle. It's a technology us street riders inherited from the racing world, and it was meant to allow the rider to, in theory, shave a little bit of time off their lap times. Here's a quick little example of me accelerating up to freeway speeds and shifting without pulling in the clutch or changing my throttle position. This Quickshifter kit is a part made by Honda, and the part number is 08U70MKFD40, which is kind of a mouthful. When I was thinking about buying the Quickshifter a couple months ago, a lot of the places I looked listed that this part supports the 2017 through the 21 models, and at the time only one or two resellers had updated the product page to list that it supported the 22. I even called the dealer that I bought the bike from, as well as another Honda dealer nearby, and they were not even able to verify that this worked for the 2022. I wanted to be 100% sure that it supported my bike, and I saw other people in various forums asking if it supported the 22, so it appears I wasn't the only one who wasn't sure it was compatible. Eventually, I just checked Honda's own parts catalog for my bike, and they listed that it's compatible with the 2022. So for all of you out there with a 2022 and you're thinking about getting a Quickshifter, and you're not sure if this part will work with your bike, I can confirm for you that it is fully supported. The part didn't come with a manual or install guide in the box, but you can find it very easily by searching for the model number with the word instructions, and it should be one of the first results. I recommend downloading it and printing it out if you can. It'll list all the tools you need, but I actually found this tools list to be a little incomplete. In addition to what the instructions list, I also used a flathead and Phillips screwdriver, and I found a socket extender and long pair of pliers to be extremely useful for this install, borderline necessary. So after you get the cover off, the instructions tell you to move this canister out of the way. Then you actually got to get to the plug where you plug in the Quickshifter. It's in this little rubber housing, and there's a zip tie here sort of holding everything together, and the plug is way back there. So it's hard to get at, but this is where your long pliers will come in handy to remove the cap from it. Now it's time to mount the shift sensor. It's kind of hard to see in the video, but there's a little dot on the gear change arm, and you have to line that up with the notch in the shift sensor mount. Then you need to plug in your shift sensor, and the plug is not braced up against anything, so the best you're going to be able to do is pull it out a little bit and get your finger back behind it so you can kind of brace it against your finger when you plug it in. When you screw the bolt in to hold in the shift sensor, it's actually reusing the existing bolt. The kit does come with a few bolts, but the instructions are very clear on which ones they want you to reuse and which ones they want you to replace. So be sure to take note on which ones you can discard and which ones you need to set aside. At this stage, you remove a little piece that comes on your bike and replace it with a mounting bracket. Basically, there's a little clip on the wire coming out of the shift sensor, and this piece is where you mount that clip into. Now, this is where the socket extension and the long pair of pliers came in handy. It's kind of hard to get down in there. It doesn't look very far in from the video, but it's kind of far in there, kind of hard to get my fat fingers in there. Now it's time to kind of put everything back together. So you start with the zip tie. I think the zip tie is just to help keep water and moisture out of the rubber housing and off of the connection in there. And like I mentioned in my last video, now that you have some covers off or you have access to some pieces that are super dusty, might as well take the moment to wipe that off so that you keep everything nice and clean. Putting the canister back on is a little bit tricky. It's kind of hard to see in the video, but there's this rubber hole and that slides over a metal cylinder back there. And this is where your long pair of pliers come in handy once again. Once your canister is in place, go ahead and bolt it back in. Obviously, these are bolts that you reuse, so set them aside and remember where they go. So I did things a tiny bit differently from what the instructions say. The instructions tell you to remove the gear change pedal and assemble the entire thing before you put it on. If you do remove the gear change pedal, they do instruct you to re-grease the mounting bolt for it, so I decided to just save myself a couple of steps. Before you tighten down your gear change arm, I recommend getting up on the bike and putting your foot in place and making sure it's in the right spot. I actually got mine too high, so I had to loosen it again and get it in the right spot, but that's not a huge deal. One thing I've always done out of habit, I guess, is tuck things between my legs when I don't have a nearby surface to put it on, and I'm just now realizing how ridiculous that looks. Now that the Quickshifter hardware is installed, it's time to initialize the Quickshifter in your settings menu. Before you can do that though, they actually want you to plug in the SCS short connector, which is your service connector. Here's the part number for that. I'm not going to bother reading it, but you can find them for pretty cheap online. I see them listed anywhere from 10 to 20 bucks. Now, I don't have this part, but I was a little too impatient to wait for it to show up. But I was taking a look at it, and as you can see, it's just jumping 2 contacts in your service connector. So if you have a pair of wire strippers and some wire laying around, I'm not going to say that I officially recommend it, but if you have a pair of wire strippers and some wire laying around, you could save yourself a few bucks. With the service connector plugged in, you just need to go to your settings menu, then go to service, then Quickshifter, then equipment, and turn it on. Once you have it turned on, then you need to go to initialize, and this is where I ran into my first problem. What you're supposed to see here is the words preparing for initialization, but I just got a blank yellow screen. So I turned the ignition off, turned it back on, went back to it, same thing. After a few seconds of head scratching, I realized I probably didn't have the shift sensor plugged in all the way. And sure enough, when I got down there and I pushed on it even harder, eventually I heard a click. After I made sure it was plugged in all the way, I went back to the initialize menu and I saw what I was supposed to see. At this point, you need to put the bike in neutral and start the engine and let it idle until you see initialize succeeded. Once your Quickshifter is initialized, you actually have to go enable it. So to do that, go to your function menu, then go to Quickshifter, then go to up and turn that on, and then go to down and then turn that one on if you want to use that as well. From here, you can also change your up and down level, which is essentially the sensitivity settings. I'll be honest, I spent a little bit of time playing around with this and I can't really tell a difference. You do have access to these settings all the time. You don't have to have your service connector plugged in order to access this. The second issue I ran into was when I was finished, the check engine light was on. So I freaked out for a second, but I plugged the service connector back in and I went into my service menu, and then I went into DTC, which is essentially your error codes, and it listed error code 107. Error code 107 is an error with your shift sensor. So this is actually because I turned on my Quickshifter and I tried to initialize it with it not plugged in all the way. So it saved an error code 107 because it did not detect the shift sensor. And even though it was now detected and initialized and now enabled, the error code was still saved in my DTC menu. So all you have to do is plug in your service connector, go to your service menu, go to DTC, highlight error code 107, and then clear it from there. Once it was cleared, the check engine light went away and all was well. So yeah, that concludes the Quickshifter install. As you can see, it's not a difficult install at all. If you're thinking about getting one and you read through the instructions and you watch this video, you should have no problem going through it yourself. There's nothing complicated about it. Probably take you about an hour or so. It took me a little bit longer because I kept moving my lights and camera around, but you could definitely do it in one sitting and be done with it. So what do I think of the Quickshifter? Well, I'm probably not using it for its intended purpose. I'm not racing this thing and I don't ride super hard or anything. I couldn't tell you how much of a difference it would make in your lap times if you were able to shift just a little bit quicker. Maybe it'll make a difference, I don't know, but yeah, I pretty much just ride around the street. You know, I do go on some long rides when I can. I don't ride super crazy anymore. I mean, I did when I was young and stupid, but yeah, I'm pretty much a casual rider now. But yeah, no, I really do like the Quickshifter. I think it's really cool, actually. There are some things that I really like about it, though it doesn't seem to shift very smoothly when you're shifting up unless you're at the higher RPM. So if you're just sort of riding around the street and you shift at say like 4, 5, 6,000 RPM, there's a noticeable delay. It's actually kind of slow, and the bike noticeably slows down when you do shift. I mean, it still shifts and it shifts smoothly, but it just takes a little bit longer and it slows you down, which is I don't really like. So I actually end up not really using the Quickshifter unless I am accelerating, if I'm going pretty fast on a straightaway or getting onto the freeway or something. I will use the Quickshifter, but otherwise I just shift normally using the clutch. But when you are really getting on the throttle and you're accelerating quickly and you're at the higher RPMs and you shift up, it actually shifts instantly, and it's really impressive. It's really cool. But I would say the biggest benefit I get out of it, and this kind of surprised me because I didn't even really consider this. So this model does support downshifting. Some Quickshifters only support upshifting, but this one supports up and down. And when I'm slowing down, either coming to a stop with my throttle closed all the way, or if I'm slowing down before a turn or a corner, shifting down is actually really nice with the Quickshifter. So, you know, instead of having to pull your clutch in and shift down and then bring the clutch back out and try to rev match or whatever, shifting down is smooth, it's immediate, it's feels great, and this pretty much happens at any speed, any gear, any RPM. So yeah, I mean, shifting down is actually what I use this thing more than shifting up, and that really surprised me. I actually didn't really think about that at all when I got this thing. And another benefit that I actually get from this bike is, you know, I'm a little embarrassed to admit, but I was missing second gear kind of often. You know, like maybe once or twice every ride, I would take off and accelerate pretty quickly in first gear, and then I'd go to shift in a second, and then it just stayed in neutral. So, you know, I don't know if it's just me or if it's just this bike or where the shift lever was when the bike was stock, but it was happening to me every once in a while, and it's really annoying because, you know, you want to slow the bike down and you got to pull the clutch back in and try to rev match a little bit. And, you know, otherwise, if you try to just sort of jam into gear once you've missed second gear, you're gonna clunk your transmission together. It's really hard in your transmission to do that. So, but yeah, I haven't missed second gear a single time since I got the Quickshifter. So, that is a benefit that I never even considered, and something that I that I really like about the Quickshifter. Okay, that does it for this video. I really appreciate you guys watching. Those of you who have subscribed, I'm not really one to ask for subscribers, but those of you who have, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the support. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day, and we will catch you in the next video.